Hello, in this video I'm going to go over the multiplayer setup for the dynamic combat text asset. I'm going to go over how it's set up in the project that's included. So if you open the map shooting gallery map and if you run it with multiple clients, so if you go to play this drop down this box here, this might look a little bit different depending on what version of Unreal you have. But if you set the number of players to more than one, so we set it to 4, and you set the net mode to play as listen server, if you run that, you're going to get multiple versions of the game. So on the top left, I have the server. So you see that if I shoot this target here, you can see the text on all the clients popping up as well. So just to make sure that the number is replicated, if I shoot it just one at a time, that's 114, 96, 116. If I go to client 1 on the top right, you'll see that you see the text pop up on all the other clients and the server as well. And let's try one more. Let's go to client 2 on the bottom left. So if we shoot that target straight up ahead, you'll see that you'll get the text pop up on all the other windows as well. So this project is based on the first person project template that you can create from the Unreal Starter projects. I've had to make a couple of changes to get this working in multiplayer because by default that project is not multiplayer ready. So I'm not going to go over exactly what it did. You can sort of look at the blueprint yourself, but just a couple of things that I'm just going to quickly sort of talk about is I've made the first person projectile replicated. So if I just open that quickly, and if you go to class defaults, you see that this is replicated. By default, it isn't. And then in the actual first person character, the logic for spawning the projectile, I've added some extra logic to make it so that it's multiplayer compatible. So only the server will spawn the projectile. So that's going to be different for your own game, of course. So a couple of things that I want to just go over in terms of multiplayer is that the dynamic combat text object itself, so the object that has most of the logic, this one here, BP underscore combat text, that is not replicated. So if you go to class settings for this object, you'll see that replicates is set to false. That's because this is a visual only component. All the clients can spawn their own versions, and then they can handle animation and the way it sort of moves on screen by itself. All they need is a call from the server and certain properties like the actual damage to show, the text type to show. So they just need those to be sent from the server, and then everything else is handled client side. So we don't have to send all that animation data through the network and use bandwidth. That isn't really necessary. So, but what you do need now, and now could be set up differently in your own game, but in this level, the object that actually that displays the text, so in this case, these shooting targets, now they are replicated. So if you open that and you go to class defaults, you see that this is replicated. And that kind of makes sense. So in your game, if it's whether it's enemies or walls or crates that you destroy that you want to show numbers, whenever it happens on one client, you obviously want to see that for everyone else, right? So if you shoot an enemy and it takes that 10 damage, then obviously you want that that health to be reduced on all the clients as well. So enemies and things like crates generally will be replicated, and that's the same for the shooting target. Now, the setup for creating the combat text is exactly the same as we've seen in the setup guide. The only difference really is that when the component is hit, so when this mesh is hit, we only check for that hit detection on the server. So this switch has authority. Now, again, if you're familiar with multiplayer, if your game is already multiplayer ready, then all this stuff should sort of be quite simple. So if this is the authority version of the shooting target, then it's going to destroy the projectile. And since the projectile is replicated, it's going to destroy it on all the clients as well. And then the server. So all this logic, just keep in mind, all this logic only runs on the server, okay? And this function here is this function. So all this is server only, okay? All of this, in fact, is server only. So the server destroys a projectile, it stores the impact point, and then it calls this function. And then this function determines a few things. This function determines what type of text to show. It determines the damage to show. So it does the random damage here. So again, server side. And then it calls this multicast function. Now, the multicast function is going to get all the clients to also call this function. And then the server is going to send all the things that it's pre-calculated. So the server has determined what the text type is. The server has determined what damage it is, and the server has determined the location of the text to spawn at. And then this multicast function is going to get all the clients, and all the clients will call this function, and is going to use the properties that have been sent by the server. And it doesn't really have to calculate anything because it's already got it. And then it just has to locally call the activate text to display it. So I guess one more thing to mention is that all this logic here is going to be different for your game. It could be very similar. You could sort of copy it and do it the same way, but likely, you're going to have your own combat systems. You're going to have your own ways to determine what types of text. So this is just set up for demonstration, right? So this logic here just means that so each of these shooting targets has like a demonstration type, so you can change it to normal. This one's player damage taken. This one is elemental damage. So that's just a way for me to get these targets to show different types of text every time you shoot it. And this is the logic that kind of checks what it is and then displays that text. So obviously in your game, you'll do this through like a combat system. But that's pretty much all there is to getting it to work in to multiplayer. Again, like out of the box, this level, if you run it with multiple clients, then it does replicate and you will see that damage text pop up on every client. So you can use this project and this shooting target as a guide to set it up in a similar way in your own project. So just to recap really quickly, when your object needs to display combat text, whether it detects a hit or whether a damage like collision hits it or something like that, you want the server to detect that hit, and then you want the server to calculate as many properties as you need, so the damage, the impact point, and then you want the server to call a multicast function on all the clients, passing it the required information, and then the client can activate that text like client side only, right? And then the client will do all the animations and all that without needing to be replicated. So that's pretty much it for this multiplayer setup guide. Again, like just look at the examples, look at that demo sort of project, and that should give you a good start to get this working in your own projects as well. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.